Imagine a city, deep within the lush green embrace of a West African forest. The air is warm and alive with the sounds of birds and the distant hum of human life. Sunlight filters through the canopy, dappling the wide, straight avenues below. These streets are remarkably clean, stretching for miles, flanked by houses with walls of polished red clay that shine like burnished copper. At the very heart of this metropolis stands a vast royal palace. Courtyards, galleries, shimmering brass plaques, magnificent ivory carvings. This was Benin City at its zenith, a center of immense power and breathtaking artistry. The Oba, adorned in coral beads and intricate robes, presides over a court of dazzling complexity. How did such a remarkable civilization rise, flourish for centuries, and create art that would one day astonish the world? Long before the first bronze was ever cast, the story of Benin began with the Edo people. They were farmers, living in the fertile lands of what is now southern Nigeria. Their lives were tied to the rhythm of the seasons. They cleared patches of the dense forest to cultivate yams, oil palms, other crops. They were skilled hunters-fishers, drawing sustenance from the rich environment around them. These early communities were small, family groups living in villages. Governance was local, elders and respected leaders guiding the community, upholding traditions passed down through generations. Over time, these scattered villages began to coalesce. Stronger leaders emerged, individuals who could command respect. Organized for defense, organized for larger communal projects. Small chiefdoms formed. A more complex society began to take shape. The people built homes from the red earth of the forest, crafting sturdy structures of wood and packed clay. They developed rules and social structures to manage growing populations. A pivotal moment in this early history was the arrival of Oranmiyan. Oral traditions, the living histories of the Edo, tell of a time of strife when local chiefs sent a message to the spiritual center of Ife. They asked for a wise ruler to bring order. In response, the Oni, king of Ife, sent his son, Oranmiyan. This marked the beginning of a new dynasty, the Obas, who would transform chiefdoms into a unified, powerful state. The link to Ife was crucial. Ife was renowned for sophisticated art, naturalistic brass heads, terracotta heads. The new dynasty merged with Edo culture, creating something uniquely powerful. The Oba became the central figure, political and spiritual. Divine kingship took root. The Oba was the bridge between the living and the realm of spirits and ancestors. The Oba's palace was not just a royal residence, it was the symbolic and political center of the entire Benin Empire. It was a vast, sprawling complex with high enclosing walls. To enter its gates was to step into another world, a meticulously organized universe dedicated to glorifying the king and running his realm. The palace was laid out as a series of immense courtyards. Some were public, receiving dignitaries and holding grand ceremonies. Others were private, for the Oba, his family, and the highest chiefs. The architecture itself declared power, built of red clay on a grand scale, wooden pillars carved with historical scenes and geometric patterns, large verandas and galleries supported by those pillars, atop gateway turrets, bronze birds with outstretched wings, symbols of the Oba's power and connection to the heavens. The most striking were the shimmering brass plaques on the pillars. Hundreds of cast rectangles, each a masterpiece depicting events and figures. In the courtyard stood ancestral altars, commemorative heads, carved ivory tusks, ceremonial bells, a living institution embodying the majesty and continuity of the Benin Kingdom. The art of Benin is world-renowned, and for good reason. It is an art of extraordinary technical skill and profound symbolic meaning. While artists in Benin worked with many materials, wood, ivory, coral, it is their masterful work in metal, brass, and bronze that has captured the world's imagination. These were not simply decorative objects. They were, in many ways, the kingdom's history books. They provided a permanent, visual record of kings, queens, chiefs, and pivotal events. These are not exact portraits in the Western sense. they capture the divine nature of kingship. Guild casters worked exclusively for the Oba, materials and imagery under royal control. These were sacred, legitimizing the Oba and the dynasty. The creation of a Benin bronze was a complex and almost magical process, a secret passed down within the Royal Casters Guild. The technique is known as the lost wax method, Sire Perdue. This ancient process allows incredibly detailed, one-of-a-kind sculptures. The journey from a lump of clay to a gleaming bronze head begins with a clay core covered in beeswax, where every minute detail is meticulously sculpted. The wax model is encased in clay, sprue channels connect it to the outside. Heated, the clay hardens and the wax melts out. Lost wax, leaving a precise hollow in the shape of the sculpture. A crucible of copper, zinc, and tin becomes molten metal. With immense skill and courage, they pour the metal into every tiny crevice. Once cooled and solidified, the mold is broken to reveal the bronze. The inner clay core is carefully removed and the surface polished to radiance, transforming humble materials into immortal power. An art that turns memory into metal. In the late 15th century, a new presence appeared on the coast. Portuguese ships arrived in the Bight of Benin. Tall masts, billowing sails, seeking new trade routes and new resources. This was Benin's first direct contact with Europeans. It marked the beginning of a complex relationship. The Oba saw opportunity and controlled trade. Pepper, ivory, finely woven textiles. In return came rare and prized items. Copper, zinc, fueling royal bronze casting and artistic expansion. Coral beads from the Mediterranean woven into the Oba's ceremonial regalia. Firearms, new military advantage. Benin plaques recorded the meeting. Straight hair, aquiline noses, European clothing and weapons. Two confident worlds in dialogue. Over centuries, trade shifted toward human lives, and strain grew. The late 19th century saw the scramble for Africa. European powers carved up the continent for control and resources. Independent Benin stood in their way. Tensions rose over the Oba's trade monopoly. The trigger came in January 1897. A British delegation led by Acting Consul General James Phillips pressed toward Benin City against warnings during sacred ceremonies when the Oba could not receive visitors. The party was ambushed and killed by a faction of chiefs, providing a pretext for invasion. A punitive expedition mobilized, about 1,200 soldiers armed with the latest weapons, including Maxim guns. They marched on Benin City. After 10 days of fierce fighting, the defenders were overwhelmed. The city was captured and systematically looted. Plaques were pulled from pillars, ancestral heads seized, and large parts of the city set on fire. The Oba was exiled, independence extinguished, Benin absorbed into southern Nigeria. Even after overwhelming destruction, the spirit of the Edo people was not extinguished. Stories were still told, rituals still performed, knowledge of history, lineage, and customs endured. The British eventually restored the monarchy in 1914 and Weka II took the throne, son of exiled Ovenramwen. He rebuilt the palace and re-established royal guilds, commissioning new works and reviving traditions. Through the 20th century toward 1960 independence, the Oba remained a vital symbol of Edo identity. Festivals and ceremonies again flourished. Guilds continued. Youths learned ancestral crafts. The Benin bronzes, masterpieces abroad, are more than art to Benin. They are stolen memories and missing pages. Calls for return grew into a global conversation. Museums reckon with the past. Some return bronzes. Homecoming begins. Slow, complex, monumental. A new museum will house returned treasures and research. The return of bronzes is the return of memory. Benin's epic, kings, artists, survivors, told in its own land, in its own voice.